If you were watching me a few weeks ago walking around in my Victorian winter ensemble, hiking up a mountain and wondering how I wasn't slipping and sliding all over the place, well, the answer is I was. I just didn't necessarily show you guys the times that I was sliding around and falling over wearing those Victorian boots that, at least for me, didn't have such great traction. I will say it did feel very much like I fit into that video that I found a while back of Edwardian College age women playing in the snow. It seemed like I fit very well into all of their slipping and sliding and rolling around in the snow as well. However, at the end of that video, I mentioned that I found a knitting pattern for a pair of overshoes, which said that American women wear them in the wintertime over their boots outside of the carriage to actually get better traction. After staring at that pattern for the last few weeks, I was just far too curious to see if it would actually work. So I'm gonna go put these knit overshoes to the test and see if they actually help me not fall over when I'm walking around in the ice and snow on Victorian boots. If you'd like to knit along, then you're going to need 220 yards of worsted weight wool for your main color, approximately 35 yards of a contrasting color for the stripe, 3mm sized needles, and a tapestry needle to weave in the ends. I'll leave a link in the description below to all of the items that I used and show here, just in case you want to make sure you're using exactly the same ones. These overshoes fit my feet and I wear a size 8, but it is knitting so it's quite stretchy, so it might also fit a few other sizes. To begin, we're going to start knitting one of the overshoes by casting on 60 stitches in whatever method you like the best. I like doing a German longtail cast on because it's a nice balance of sturdy but yet still a little bit stretchy. After you finished casting on 60 stitches, you're then going to commence your ribbing. So you're going to knit 2, purl 2 for 30 rows. No matter if you're working on the right or the wrong side of the work, you're always going to begin your row with a knit 2 followed by a purl 2. Once you've finished knitting 30 rows of ribbing, it's time to add the contrasting color stripe. When you're done with your 30th row, just join in the next color in the next row and commence with your knit 2, purl 2 ribbing for 12 rows. After you're finished knitting 12 rows in a contrasting color, you're done with the stripe and you switch back to your main color for another 50 rows. A fun side note is that the stripe color here actually matches my fascinator color, which is yarn that I hand dyed with a natural plant that's found in the area. It's an indigo dyeing process. For your knitting, you're not going to change the pattern at all, just switch back to your main color and knit 2, purl 2. Going by the original pattern, the colors chosen were a claret for the main color and a black stripe. I decided to go with a black as the main color and a blue as a contrasting stripe just to match my outfit a little bit better. I wanted to make blue the main color, but I didn't have quite enough yarn left, so it turned out to be the stripe instead. Alright, after you finish knitting 50 more rows of knit 2, purl 2 ribbing in your main color, you are ready to cast off. Now you finish the knitting portion of your first overshoe. Just for size reference, this rectangle is 14 inches by 6.5 inches unstretched. In order to finish off this overshoe, we're going to do some seaming. First, you're going to fold it in half, as my kindergarten teacher would say, hot dog style, and you're going to seam together the long edge. You're also going to seam together one of the short edges. Make sure you're seaming together the short edge that has more of your main color, basically the edge where you cast off. You want one end to be open to be able to get your foot in. I've sewn together the long edge and the cast off edge, and I've also woven in the ends. We're right now looking at the inside of the overshoe or the wrong side, and that's important because it matters with this next step. For the next step, you're going to fold over the cuff of your overshoe. This is the side that you left open, and it's where you only have 30 rows of your main color. Then you're going to want to actually sew that cuff in place. I used the tail of the yarn that I still had available, but do this very, very loosely as you still want to be able to stretch this to fit over your boots. After you've sewn the cuff down, you now want to turn the overshoe the right way around. So you're going to turn it the other way around, and we have finished our overshoe completely. One is done. go ahead and follow the directions exactly the same way one more time to have 2 overshoes. In order to test these overshoes, I've decided to wear my Victorian boots with more of my modern clothing, just so that you can see my shoes a little bit more clearly than underneath my long skirts. I went back to the exact same trail that I hiked before in these Victorian boots, and I decided to test it out in different conditions. This first path is a little bit bumpy, but not very hilly, so while I had to be cautious where I was stepping, even without the overshoes on, I didn't really feel like I was losing my traction too much. The second test I decided to do was going up and downhill. This is where I found that I had the most problems when I was initially wearing these shoes, so I thought I would try it again without overshoes just to solidify the fact that I had a difficult time. And as you can see, I definitely struggled going uphill and was even less graceful going back downhill. After verifying that yes, these Victorian boots are incredibly slippery without any added traction help, I decided to try out the overboots. I put them on as best as I could, following the diagram instructions. Would definitely recommend sitting down in order to do this, maybe not in the freezing cold snow, but they fit over my shoes pretty well. The seam did look a little bit odd, but when you're standing, it really doesn't stick out too much. Now with the overshoes on, I tried the flatter part of the trail one more time, and I have to say that I felt much more confident walking in these. I didn't feel like I had to watch every step, although I did still have to be a little bit careful not to twist my ankle on any of the bumps that were on the trail. At this point, I also got confident enough to see how much traction I would have if I intentionally attempted to slide, and even though I was trying my hardest, I honestly couldn't get my shoes to slide at all with these overshoes on. Also, yes, I am trying a new set using my hair curlers when I was just finishing up these overshoes, so please excuse my curlers and hair wrap. The biggest difference that I noticed was wearing these overshoes walking up and downhill. I honestly felt like I didn't even have to think twice about where I needed to place my feet or to make sure that I wasn't slipping anywhere. I honestly thought that maybe the first time I walked up and down this hill without these overshoes on, that maybe I was a little less confident in walking and that's why I slipped. So I decided halfway down the hill to take my overshoes off after testing out the traction with them on, and promptly proceeded to fall down. So I think that this is one really good demonstration of how sturdy and stable these overshoes make you when you don't have any traction on your boots. Although at this point I think I have thoroughly driven home the point that the overshoes do really add a ton of traction, I decided to try the hill one more time with one overshoe on and one overshoe off, and I'm very glad that I was wearing them because I'm pretty sure I would have fallen at least 2 more times if I wouldn't have. In short, these overshoes really add a ton of traction and made me feel much more confident in walking in these boots in icy and snowy conditions. One thing I did notice, however, is that after wearing the boots for a while, the heat from my feet actually started to melt the snow that accumulated on the bottom of the overshoes, which then stuck to the ground. And I basically, with every step, was pulling off the overshoes more and more. And at some point that was going to become even more dangerous than just slipping and sliding all over the place, but also tripping over my overshoes. So I decided that I would use my shoes' shoelaces to thread it and weave it in and out of my knitting to tie the overshoes up. I think if I were to wear these again though, I would actually take a separate piece of lace or string or ribbon to thread through the knitting here and actually hold them up on my shoes, just to make it easier to take my overshoes on and off without also having to unlace my shoes. This is actually more of an important point than I thought, because when I was walking back home, I ended up not taking my overshoes off when I had to walk across some pavement and sidewalks because it would be too much of a hassle to, and I ended up putting a hole in the bottom of these overshoes from scraping my feet against the hard pavement. So if you also want to make these overshoes, please do note these don't do very well and they don't hold up very well when you're just walking over pavement. They're really meant for snow-covered paths and walkways. Now that my overshoes are tied on, even though they're sticking quite a bit to the ground, they aren't coming off my feet anymore, and the sticking is actually quite a feature now because I feel like I have a ton of grip wherever I'm walking. Now that I felt like I had a very workable solution to having no grip on my hiking trail, I decided to really take these to a test and frolic around in the snow and woods a little bit more. I have to say, overall, this should be considered a success. These are actually really great at keeping up the traction when I'm running around and playing in the snow, especially once I tied my shoelaces around the top. I think in the future I would definitely thread some ribbon through here so I don't have to tie my shoes to them, so that they can be like a nice separate tie. Maybe a cute bow would also look really adorable like the original pattern called for. Also, the longer I wear it with like my more modern outfit, the more that I think that I would actually wear this. Would you wear this? I think it actually looks pretty cute, and I mean, anything to help me from falling down in the ice and snow is a plus, right? Although I am very curious to see how long it'll take these to dry. They're quite heavy wool and they're soaked in water, and they also have hitchhikers on them because while I went trudging through the woods around here. This is a pretty good excuse to go out and kind of play around in the snow, so this is really fun for me. Thank you so much for joining. If you want to interact with me anywhere else, all of my links to like my Instagram or my Patreon are in the description below. And I can't wait to see you again soon with another video I've been working on that's a bit of a bigger project, but I really hope that you'll like it. See you then. I don't know if there's an elegant way for me to get off of this. Oh boy. Oh! Elegant.